Hello, good day. Now, for this particular lecture, we are going to talk about the solution of the questions related to the utility. In this particular assignment, we'll be solving different questions related to the margin utility and the utility maximization behavior of individuals. The first question in this particular exercise is related to the calculation of marginal utility. The first question reads, the following table shows the total utility that Eleanor derives from visits to the cinema per week. Now, if you look at this table, in this particular table, you have got three rows. The first row represents the number of visits, like say, for example, 1 visit, 2 visits, 3 visits, 4 visits, and up to the 8 visits. The second row actually shows the total utility in sterling, say, for example. Now, the total utility is 12 for the first visit, and 20 for the 2 visits that a person makes, and 25 for 3 visits he makes. And similarly, the 28 for the 4 visits. And similarly, for the 8 visits, the total utility actually becomes 29. Now, what actually we have to do? We have to find out the marginal utility from the total utilities. If you look at from the 0 to 1 visits, the total utility increases from 0 to 12. So it means that the marginal utility is 12. From first unit to the second units, the total utility increases from 12 to 20. So it means that, like, your total utility has increased from 12 to 20. So if you subtract 12 from 20, you get 8. So the marginal utility has fallen to 8. From the second visit to the third visit, the total utility has increased from 20 to 25. So it means that the additional utility that you have got from the third visit is just 5. Similarly, from the fourth visit, it is 3. From the fifth visit, it is 2. And from the sixth visit, it is 1. From the seventh, it is 0. And from the eighth visit, like you can see here, it is -2. What actually you observe here? We observe here the law of diminishing margin utility, which states that every consecutive consumption of the units of the goods decreases the additional utility that you get from the consumption of that good. Now, for the B part, you have to draw the curves for these particular kind of total utility and margin utility. As you can observe that for the 0 unit of consumption, the total utility that a person is getting is 0. But for the first unit of consumption, it means that the first visit to the cinema, the total utility actually increases to 12, which is this 12. Yeah. And for the for the 2 visits, it becomes 20. Like you can see here, the 20. So the second point on this curve is actually the point basically which is corresponding the 2 to 20, and the third one is the 3 to 25. Now for the 3 visits, the total utility is 25. For 4 visits, it is around like 28, and then 30, then 31, and 31, and then 29. So it means you can see like here that the total utility is increasing. But what do we observe? That total utility is increasing at decreasing rate. That is what makes this shape of the curve. As you can see here, the shape of the curve is concave, which represent that the total utility or the curve increases at a decreasing rate. That total additional utility is actually positive, but every positive next number is less than the previous number. So it means that the total utility is increasing at a decreasing rate. As far as the curve of what the margin utility is concerned, for the 0 unit, as you can see, when the total utility is 0, so of course the margin utility is 0. From 0 to 1 unit, you may see here, like, that the total utility increases from 0 to 12. So as the margin utility, the margin utility that a person gets from the first visit to the cinema is also 12. So it means that at this particular point, these two curves are coinciding. For the second visit or for the 2 visits, the total utility becomes 20. It means that the additional utility that a person gets does not actually is a 20 from the second unit, 12 from the second units. It just becomes 8. So here, like that's what basically happens. And for every consecutive unit, for other units, basically you can see like, this curve is falling. Again, this is representing the law of diminishing margin utility, which states that the consecutive consumption of some kind of a unit actually diminishes your total margin utility over the time. And at points, basically, it becomes negative. And this negative basically happens when your consumption becomes too excessive. So when a person in this particular diagram is making 8 visits to the cinema, the additional utility that he's getting actually becomes negative, and that basically decreases the overall total utility. Now the question is, the C part of this question is, how many visits to the cinema will she make per week if the price of the ticket is £4 and 2.5 pounds? Now the 4 point and 2.5 pounds shows the marginal cost. And the marginal benefit of actually visiting the cinema is represented by the marginality that a person gets from visiting the cinema. So it means that the person will be maximizing his or her utility, will be like, on the point where the marginal cost is equal to the marginal benefit. So the marginal cost, as you can see here, is again the marginal price that a person pays. Like, say, for example, what is the marginal cost? The marginal cost is a price a person pays for one visit to the cinema. And the marginal benefit the person gets is the marginal utility. This is the benefit the person gets by visiting the cinema. Okay, so you can see here, this green line shows the 4 pounds. This is 4 pounds. And this particular yellow line is actually showing the 2.5 pounds. So the point where basically these two curves meet together, the price curve and the marginality curve, that are the point basically that tells you that at which point of which price a person will be visiting, or how many times to the cinema, or at what number of visits, basically, like, he will be maximizing his or her utility. Now, basically, you can see here, like, that this particular actually, like, this, the green line is meeting with the blue line at this particular point. Since the visits cannot be in the decimal fractions, the total number of visits that will maximize the utility of the person will be 3. And similarly, for the 2.5 pound price of the ticket, like, this total utility maximization will happen at the 4 visits. So in the question number 2, this question number 2 is a multiple choice. The multiple choice question is about the total utility behavior. Like, say, for example, this question asks, what happens to the total utility when the total utility will fall? Whenever. The total utility will fall whenever. What happens? Like, what happens when the total utility falls? Like, what happens means, like, say, for example, what makes the total utility curve going down? Basically, like, we have seen that this kind of a curve, like, that at this particular point, like, that becomes like, maximum, and then it actually starts falling. So this actually happens when the marginality is negative. It cannot happen when the marginality is falling, because this whole region is showing that the total utility is increasing at the decreasing rate. So at these all points, basically, which are on this particular points, basically are showing that the marginal utility is falling. Similarly, the 2 points B and C cannot be possibility, because, like, that you cannot have total utility negative when, or falling when, your marginality is rising. So it means that this can be out of the, like, question. And similarly, this is also out of the question when the marginality has reached a maximum. Your total utility cannot be falling. Similarly, when the marginality is 0, the total utility is maximum. So the total utility only falls when the marginal utility is negative. Like, say, for example, the -2 in the upper case.